All right, welcome back. It's the Breer Report for February the 12th. We got a mailbag edition coming for you. As always, there will be a longer form mailbag on the website at themmqb.com. Be sure to check that out. We are now into the off season. It is the 2025 off season. We're 3 days in. We have just 12 days until the NFL scouting combine in Indianapolis. I land in Indy a week from Monday. Workouts start that Thursday, but players will be landing in Indy. Starting on that Monday, teams will be getting there and things will be rolling that Tuesday. So we are not that far away from starting to talk about the draft prospects, about free agency, about who's getting franchised, about the trade market. All of those things are coming for you. And so we're going to start to look forward with this week's mailbag as well. We've got 4 questions instead of 3. We got a bonus question for you this week. We're going to focus on the 2 teams in Los Angeles, thanks to my producer, Kent. Figured that'd be a good way to kick the offseason off. And first question is from Matt Hoffheimer. That's at Matt Hoffy2. If Matthew Stafford is not back as a Ram, who are some of the teams that would have an interest in making a move for him? Now, first, let me lay out the landscape here a little bit. I don't think it's a sure thing that Matthew Stafford is going to be available. I think the coaches would love to keep him there. However, it was a difficult negotiation during the 2024 offseason. It took about 6 months for them to find some middle ground and strike a deal. And what they did was basically set it up to create a crossroads after the 24 season. So they moved $5 million forward in his deal, borrowing $4 million from 25 and another $1 million from 26 to do it, guaranteeing all of his money in 24 and then removing any guarantees from 2025. So now he's making $4 million less than he was originally scheduled to make in 25, and he has no guaranteed money left on his deal. So the sides have to go back to the table and renegotiate this. And really it's going to come down to what Matthew Stafford wants and how much the Rams are willing to spend. And then whether or not Matthew Stafford is going year to year now. The Rams have a much younger team than they had a couple of years ago. And they look like they're going to be ready to contend for a while with players on that roster. Like we can go down the list: Puka Nacua, Steve Avila, Kyron Williams, Braden Fisk, Jared Verse, Byron Young, Kobe Turner. It is a roster that looks like it's set up to win for the next 5 or 6 years, to contend for the next 5 or 6 years. So does that match up with a quarterback who may be at the part of his career where he's going year to year? And if somebody's willing to offer them a first-round pick, then would that be something that would entice the Rams to move? My phone is ringing here. I will take that later. Would that be something that would entice the Rams to move? I think it certainly could be something that would entice the Rams to move. So who would be interested? I think you got to look at teams that are either ready to win now or have coaches that are fighting for their jobs. And, I think 3 teams in particular really stand out to me as teams that should have an interest in Matthew Stafford. The first one, the most obvious one to me, is the Pittsburgh Steelers. You've got TJ Watt. He's turning 31. You've got Minka Fitzpatrick, who's turning 29. You've got an offensive line situation that finally appears like it's being fixed. You've got an intriguing young skill position player in George Pickens. And you've got a coaching staff that, I think has the sort of experience and know-how and chops to compete deep into the playoffs. The one thing they're missing, the one thing they have been missing, is a quarterback. So going and getting Matthew Stafford would make some sense to me. It would feel a little bit like, if you want to go back a generation, when they brought in Tommy Maddox to try to get themselves up to a contending level. Now, of course, Stafford's much better than Maddox, but you remember them doing that after they felt like they couldn't go forward with Cordell Stewart a generation ago. They make some sense. The Giants make some sense as well. The Giants, of course, Brian Daboll and Joe Shane and everybody else, they're going to be fighting for their jobs in 2025. I also think the Giants are a little closer than people give them credit for. When you look at their roster, Andrew Thomas, Malik Neighbors on the offensive side of the ball. The defense has some real studs up front: Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, and Kayvon Thibodeau. So, look, I don't think the Giants are that far off from being a real contender. They could be a team that could say, okay, like that's the piece that puts us over the top. And then maybe the Cleveland Browns. The financial part of this would make it a little bit complicated because they're still dealing with the Watson contract. But if they really wanted to go all in, Stafford would be the sort of guy that they would go all in on. I think that they would be more looking at an opportunity with an offset, which Stafford doesn't have the offset situation that, and obviously you have to give up draft capital to go get him. Like Kirk Cousins might fit a little bit better in Cleveland, but But if money were no object, Cleveland would certainly be a place that would look like one that would be intriguing on both sides. So those would be the three teams I'd give you right now: the Giants, the Steelers, and the Browns. Question number 2 for this week. Rambling Fan, that's at Rambling Fan. Rambling asks us, how quickly do the Rams trade wide receiver Cooper Kupp? And with the team considering his wishes, what is a realistic return if a trade is accomplished? The problem here is that Cooper Kupp is due $20 million this year. No one's paying him $20 million. All due respect. He's a great receiver. He's got a Hall of Fame case, former Triple Crown winner. He just hasn't been available the last couple of years. He's older now. He's beat up. So, if they're going to trade him, some of the finances have to be worked out here. He is guaranteed $5 million for this year. So you'd think that maybe the Rams would need at least that much, and then they'd have to negotiate the number down with a new team. Depending on their ability to do that, I think we're probably looking at around a 4th-round pick for Cooper Kupp. Now, it might wind up being more. Just a 4 sounds like the realistic return. And I think, in this case, you sort of have to work with Cooper Kupp to give him a situation that is best for him. Now, I don't know what teams are going to be out there offering for him. But one thing I do look at is teams that have young quarterbacks that could really use somebody like Cooper Kupp. So if you're the Washington Commanders and you need somebody to pair with Terry McLaurin, Cooper Kupp makes some sense to me. If you are the New England Patriots and you want to have somebody that Drake May can trust and be kind of the outlet guy for you, he makes some sense. If you're the Denver Broncos and you're looking for a smart guy who can play in Sean Payton's offense, I think Cooper Kupp makes some sense. So to me, the ideal landing spots for Cooper Kupp involve going to a place where there's a young quarterback where you look at it and you say, okay, like we've got a good group here. And maybe having like that smart, savvy veteran to set the bar for our skill position players, could be the right fit. Again, Washington would need the second part of that a little bit less because they've already got Terry McLaurin doing all of that. But I do think Kupp would be a nice complement to McLaurin. So those would be some teams that I would keep an eye on. Let's flip over to the other LA team now. Question from Ryan Connor. That's at Ryan Con 25. Are the Chargers prioritizing offensive weapons in free agency, or are they looking to add to the defense? Ryan, I'd say the answer to that question is both. I think if you look at where the Chargers are in year one, they did a very nice job of fortifying their fronts, of getting better on their fronts. And I do think that they've got the ability now to do a little bit more with the perimeter. And I think they're going to be looking at adding to the perimeter on both sides of the ball. I wouldn't be surprised if they were a player for a corner. Jesse Minter wanting to continue to build that defense out. They've got a couple of young guys in Tarheeb Still and Cam Hart that they really like from last year's rookie class. Or either of those guys going to wind up being a number one? I don't know. So if there were an opportunity to go and acquire a top flight corner, I think they'd be in on that. And, if there's an opportunity to go and bring in a receiver who can be a difference maker or a running back who can be a difference maker, I could see them going down that road as well. And then the obvious name that everybody would look at here would be Tee Higgins. Now, remember, Justin Herbert is used to working with bigger, longer targets. That's what he came up with Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and that crew. Quentin Johnston, I think, fits into that sort of realm as well. And one thing I think Higgins would bring to you is, if he is a true number one, I think he can be a true number one. It's sometimes hard. There's this Alvin Harper principle that a lot of teams operate on, and look, like I subscribe to this personally too. It's, that old Cowboys receiver from the 90s. He was great playing next to Michael Irvin, but projecting him from being a number 2 to being a number 1, that was tough, and it didn't really work out for Tampa. So the Alvin Harper principle is always to be careful about projecting somebody else's number 2 to be your number 1, whether you're talking about a corner or a receiver or a pass rusher. That can be a tough thing to do. I do think Higgins has the ability to be a number 1 receiver. And if he is a number 1 receiver, I do think that helps you slot Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnston into suitable roles. And then maybe you can go into the draft and you look at taking a running back somewhere, because this is a good running back draft, taking a running back somewhere in the first 3 rounds. I really like where the Chargers are set, how the Chargers are set up right now. They did a good job of cleaning out their cap last year. They'll continue to do that. They do have some flexibility now. So again, the idea of going and getting a Tee Higgins makes some sense to me. I really like the idea of it on both ends if Higgins does wind up making it to free agency. Our final question for this week, our fourth question is from Herbert Truther. That's at CM Sinclair. Is Tee Higgins the main priority for the Chargers in free agency? So, as I just said, CM Sinclair, I do think Higgins should be somebody that they would look at. Now, I think the bigger question here is what happens with Higgins and the Bengals. And that's what I wanted to get to with this question, because I think this is an important piece of it. There's no mistake that Joe Burrow was very available during Super Bowl week. It's no mistake that Joe Burrow's narrative over and over and over again was about keeping guys there, keeping guys in-house in Cincinnati. Joe Burrow has now played 2 seasons on a big second contract, and he understands the implications of it. He also understands how taking advantage of having a talented roster shouldn't be taken for granted, the chance to do it. And right now, the Bengals are still in a window with a group that got them to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. And so having guys like Jamar Chase and Tee Higgins and Trey Hendrickson, having those sorts of opportunities, again, shouldn't be taken for granted. So I really thought they should have gotten ahead of the Jamar Chase thing last year. Obviously, that opportunity is gone. Now you're probably going to have to pay him $40 million per year. I think it's very clear that, and you can go back to the stuff that Joe said in November and December. It's very clear that Joe Burrow wants both those guys back. And Trey Hendrickson, because you kicked that can down the road rather than extending him and rewarding him and correcting his contract. Now you're looking at probably over $30 million per year for him as well, because he has 35 sacks over the last 2 years. So they have a lot of business to do there in Cincinnati. My feeling all along had been that they were going to sign Chase and probably wind up letting Higgins go. But with some of the stuff that Joe said over the course of the last couple of weeks and really over the last couple of months about his feelings on it being realistic to keep both guys, my guess would be, yeah, you at least have to make a real effort to keep both guys. And the fact that both guys now have the same agent, they both work with Rocky Arsenault, who is Chase's longtime agent, who Higgins hired this year, tells me that there is some focus on trying to keep the band together from the other side of that quarterback receiver relationship as well, where both those guys want to stay too. So I think the Bengals try to get it done. If he does slip through, again, I really like the fit for Higgins in Los Angeles, and I like the fit for the Chargers as well. So that'll do it for our mailbag for this week. Appreciate you guys coming out. Again, be sure to check out the mailbag on themmqb.com. We are going to have another edition for you, I believe, at the end of the week. And then I'm going skiing next week, so it might be a little sparse next week, and then we'll be in the combine after that. Again, the off season is off and running. Can't wait to cover all of it with you guys. We'll see you guys later in the week.